Hi there, and welcome to another success story. Today I have the wonderful Courtney with me, and I'm going to ask her the question I ask every guest straight away. Courtney, why did you become carnivore?
Okay, well, I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, honestly. I had a long history of yo-yo dieting. I went to my first Weight Watchers meeting at 13. I've just always had a really wonky relationship with food. I was never like overweight as a kid, maybe like a little bit, a little fluffy. So when that was suggested to me at 13, it wasn't forced. I was like, yeah, I should go. I'm a little overweight, trying to play soccer. So a long history of all the diets you could think of, slim fast cans, protein bars, Special K cereal about 20 years ago had a little promo where they're like, eat two bowls of our cereal and a sensible dinner. Grapefruit diet. I mean, you name it, I've tried it. I think I started to get a little bit closer to what we should be eating when I dabbled in keto. I was keto on and off for 6, 7 years. Um, Never once heard of carnivore during that time. I don't know why I was so out of the loop. But how I got to where I am today was being keto, low carb, on and off for 7 years felt great. I was on again. I lost 50 pounds after my second baby. I was feeling awesome. And I decided to stop what was working for me because I got caught up in the whole anti diet culture BS that I saw all over social media. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great. Like, no foods are bad. Everything's okay to eat. Everything's on the table. Well, I'm realizing now that I was a carb and sugar addict and I can't moderate that. I just need to abstain. So for me, thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to just moderate like a croissant here and there, have all these things. Well, I quickly gained 40 pounds in 4 months and just felt like garbage, absolute garbage. And my husband was at the time sending me Paul Saladino's TikToks, so Carnivore MD, and he sent them to me for like about a month, and we never said anything about it. And then one day I'm like, okay, why are you sending these to me? Like, should we not be eating vegetables? I'm like, this is crazy. Like, why would we not eat vegetables? How do we get the nutrients? All the things that people say to me, I thought them too. And he's like, I don't know, I got to look into it more. So we dug into it a bit. And, I was already showing up on social media with my low carb and keto stuff. So it was just, I feel like crap. I want to feel better. I wake up in the morning just feeling exhausted. My skin is broken out. I'm on Zoloft for anxiety and depression. Like, I just had so many little awful things. I'm like, let's just try it. Honestly, I went into it. This is the first time I went into something not just for weight loss. All my other things in the past were because I wanted to lose weight. This was also because I just wasn't feeling great. So I'm like, I'm going to give it a shot. And I started documenting it because I was already showing up. And I'm like, here's what I'm going to try. I'm like, I know it sounds crazy and I'm still learning, but this is what I'm doing. And that's kind of just how it all started. And I've had all these health benefits that I didn't realize were going to be a part of it. Like, I thought maybe I would get some energy and I would lose some weight, which I needed to do. And I'm down like 40 pounds. I still have about 20 to go. My skin has cleared up drastically. There's still some here and there, but I really think that's because of the dairy that I'm addicted to. So I'm struggling with getting rid of dairy at the moment. Um, and I was on a very low dose of Zoloft at the time because I was on a higher dose and it numbed me out. So I was on a very low dose, still did not feel awesome. So because of that, I was able to notice the changes in my mood once I started eating this way because it wasn't working enough for me, the medication. And I was like, wow, I'm like, I don't feel like as anxious. I don't feel as depressed. Like, I was really low there for a point. Like, really, I won't get into like the dark stuff, but like really bad. So to feel like a shift after eating this way. And I had no idea that was even going to be a thing. It wasn't like I was like, oh, let me try this to see if I can go off my Zoloft. I feel like they don't want us to know that what we eat can affect how we are. And I feel like maybe I was a little naive to not seeing that. Like, this is literally what we eat as fuel for our body. You wouldn't put diesel in a car that needs regular gasoline. And so my understanding is, eating all these junk foods, processed food, carbs, sugar, whatever, is causing inflammation in the brain, which in turn causes anxiety and depression. So for me, that was life-changing to feel that shift in my mood. And I'm like, I think I'm ready to go off of them for the second time. I tried it before Carnivore and I wasn't ready. I was still eating a bunch of crap because I didn't know that would have anything to do with it. So that was another benefit. My most favorite one is my food freedom. And a lot of people don't understand that because they're like, Courtney, you don't eat all the other foods. How is that freedom? To them, food freedom means that they can eat all the things and feel good about it. Well, okay, do you dabble in heroin on the weekends too? Like, everything in moderation, right? Like, have that too. So for me, food freedom means not obsessing about food every day. And I used to do that. And I didn't realize that that would change with this. The mental gymnastics I would go through over sugary stuff like keto treats. Like, I guess I didn't do keto like properly the right way. I wasn't just focusing on whole foods. But now it's like, I could be surrounded by ice cream and cookies and donuts, and I just have zero desire. Whereas before, because I was consuming it here and there, I would be like, okay, if that was around me, I would either try not to have it, or I would have some, maybe try and fit it in my macros. And then I'd be like, okay, can I fit some more? Like, I was just constantly thinking about it. Or maybe I'd have them all. Maybe I'd go on a binge and have them all. And then the next day I would restrict myself. So it was just this constant battle with food. And now, since I have removed that from my diet, it's off the table. It's out of my system. So I don't crave it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they can have that freedom too. And I mean, there's nothing better that I feel so good eating meat and not having the thoughts about all that other food. That, to me, that's food freedom, having just not obsessing about it every day. So honestly, I feel like that and the Zoloft have been like the best things.
That's such a brilliant answer. And normally these interviews don't really include me much, but I just want to echo the food freedom because that was something I discovered last May. So I've been low carb since I was 50 and keto up until 55. And then for the last, nearly 4 years now, I've been carnivore, but it was only the last year did I know about food freedom. So if there's anyone listening out there or watching on YouTube, it is a thing. Because I was the same, obsessing about food. Think what we're having next. What am I going to eat in a couple of hours? And that completely goes. And that is actually golden. So it's not just a glib saying. It really makes a big difference. So that's brilliant, Courtney. Thank you so much for that. Just to clarify them, your weight loss and health journey, which I thought was really key. All the other times it was for weight loss, but this time it's because you felt sick. As well as you wanted to lose weight. When did that start? What year was that?
That I started Carnivore?
Yeah.
I'm about, I'm almost 11 months in. So on May 10th, I believe, will be my year journey. And yeah, I wish people were more accepting of the thought of carb and sugar addiction. I feel like people don't think that it's a thing. I also don't drink alcohol. I'm almost 2 years sober. And there's a reason why I don't drink that, because I can't moderate that as well. There's no just having one or two drinks. I'll have the whole bottle. And we would never go to an alcoholic and be like, oh, how sad you can't have one drink, or just have one, everything in moderation. We would never say that, socially unacceptable to say that. So why are they doing that to us who have issues with carb and sugar? Because from what I understand, it's doing the same stuff in our brain. The dopamine's getting affected. Like it is addicting. And I just wish people would be accepting of that and know that, there are people that struggle with not just having one cupcake here and there. It will consume our thoughts or will binge or whatever. So that's been frustrating on my end because it just feels like you're being dismissed, your struggles are being dismissed, and you're not being like seen and heard. And you're like, no, like this is really a struggle. And I'm, finding so many other people that that are like this, especially like Serena from Serena Carnivore. She's the first one I heard mention the whole abstaining versus moderating. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's me. And I'm like, that's not normal. Like everybody else doesn't like obsess about what they're going to be eating that day or battle their foods. So yeah, that part has been mind blowing to me.
Yeah, Serena's great. Actually, I've been interviewed by her a couple of times, and she's been on here. The moderation thing that word definitely does trigger me because there are influencers out there encouraging you to have sweet things. I'm not going to mention any names, and I always pipe up and say, well, that's all well and good if you can moderate it, if you can curb it, but the sweet taste for some people, and they're off the rails. So you can't say moderation. And that happens all the time in lots of threads. I try to get involved in social media and not get too angry with people. But you say, oh, moderation. But they just don't understand the addiction. It's definitely a big thing. I mean, Dr. Cy West, the carb addiction doctor, talks about it. But the thing you might want to know is the functional MRIs. When I did my honours part of my health sciences, the functional MRIs of the brain, I mean, it's a quantifiable, observable thing that someone who is addicted has the neurons fire in a way. And this is where the headline came from about sugar being 5 times more addictive than cocaine. That was just the way the media talked about it. But you can definitely see that there is a buzz going on in the brain. Absolutely, definitely. It's a thing. You mentioned in that brilliant answer about these other things you tried, the special K diet and all this sort of stuff. Did you ever find a diet before Carnivore that gave you some hope?
Yeah, I was paleo for a little bit and that felt pretty good. But I mean, then, and same with keto, but then came like all the treats. I feel like when I tried paleo, this was in 2010 when Mark Sisson came out with Primal Blueprint, and you couldn't go to the store and get Primal paleo cookies or keto treats. So I felt like that did pretty well for me, but I don't know, maybe just I was young, it wasn't sustainable. I was still out partying and drinking and eating pizza, at night. So it was never my focus. It was always coming from a weight loss stance and not trying to like be like in optimal health or do the best that I can to keep myself, healthy. It was always a battle. Like I would do good and then I would fall off. So I mean, just constant yo-yo.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with Carnivore that surprised me is it's so easy. It's absolutely easy, and you don't need determination and willpower. Maybe when you start, because you're still programmed in the old way. But I think the more you do it, the easier it becomes. You snuck in also the information about dairy being problematic. Why are you saying that?
Yeah, to me, it's very addicting. And I've heard it's like, I always butcher this word. I don't know if it's casein or casein. I think it's casein. The ingredient in there that is actually shown to be, addictive, and it does the things in the brain. And I find myself with those like uncontrollable urges to go back and have more, like it's a drink, like it's drugs, where you're just like, you just want more, and it's hard to not go and do that. So for me, like heavy cream, I don't have anything sweet in my diet. So I taste how sweet that is. And it starts, I feel like, kicking back in some old habits. And even like with the cheese, I feel like I can moderate cheese a little bit more, but even then, like my body wants it. So I can eat that when I'm not hungry. Whereas if I'm just sticking with meat, bacon and eggs, and butter, I won't go eat that if I'm not truly hungry. Like it's delicious, but when I'm full, I'll stop. but with cheese and cream, like I could go chug a gallon of heavy cream and not even be hungry to go do that. Like it's just like a taste thing, and whatever it's kicking off in the brain, you know, whatever dopamine things are sparking. So yeah, that's been a battle for me and what I'm trying to like get rid of right now. I kind of go off of it for a few weeks and then I'm like, oh, let me just have a little bit. And then it kind of spirals into like way too much. And then I'm not prioritizing having my beef because I just tugged a gallon of cream. So it's like it's a vicious cycle where it's not only addicting, but I think it's also preventing me from getting the nutrients that I need from beef, and I'm just getting it from the dairy, which does not make my body feel good.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've never heard it put like that, but that is a different way of looking at dairy, that it satiates you and therefore stops you getting the right amount of red meat or whatever you actually need. That's brilliant, Courtney. I'm going to use that such a lot. Dairy is one of those things that is okay for me unless it's yogurt. That triggers me, and I could eat that until the cows come home. No pun intended. So practicalities then. What is your day of eating like? Are you OMAD? Are you TOMAD? What do you do?
I am not OMAD. For me, it's hard to get in like everything I would need in one meal. I've tried it maybe twice, and it just feels for me a little bingy. Like I'm, you know, gorging myself. So I do usually 2 to 3. It depends. Sometimes I throw in some intermittent fasting. I try and not force it. Like if I wake up and 7 in the morning or whatever, and I'm hungry, like I will eat. But sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I'm still full from last night or whatever. If it feels easy, then I will do a fast. But yeah, typically 2 to 3 times a day. I do try and cap it like at night. Like I at least want a good 12 hours overnight without eating so my body can do whatever it needs to do. But other than that, I do occasionally throw in some intermittent fasting where my window would probably be like an 18-6, give or take, maybe 20-hour fast. But I just try and do that intuitively as it feels good and not force it. Like I don't want to like be miserable and unhappy during the day to get some autophagy going on. So yeah, but I think it's a good tool to play around with for sure.
And do you track your macros or do you just eyeball it?
I did in the beginning. I wanted an idea of what I was technically allowed to be having. Coming from such a high carb place the few months before, I knew my hunger cues were going to be out of whack. So it almost, it kind of like gives you the permission you need. Like, oh, you can have all this food. Like if you're coming from a place of restriction, like you can have all this food. You can have 1 to 1.5 pounds of meat, have some butter, have some bacon and eggs, and this is okay. So for me, I felt comfort in those numbers. Or maybe you're coming from a place where you've been binging a lot and you're like, okay, here's what an ideal day of eating would look like as my hunger cues sort themselves out after being on this. So just having that visual to try and hit that. Days are going to vary. I wouldn't force anything if I wasn't hungry. And if I was hungry more than my macro said I could eat, then I would. But I think it's just nice to like have a visual, at least in the beginning, to kind of just know where you're at while your body gets used to it. So as of now, I'm not tracking. I kind of know what it looks like if because honestly, I'm toying with the idea of tracking again because I'm on my last like 20 pounds, and I feel like I've just been kind of in maintenance mode lately. Probably the dairy because it makes me more snacky and it messes with my hunger cues. So I know like I don't have to track. I can kind of roll it back and know that I'll have like 1 to 1.5 pounds of ground beef, a few pieces of bacon, and a few eggs, and that would be like some good macros for me. And that's still having like 1,800 calories and 130 grams of fat roughly, as well as protein. So not technically tracking right now, but I do need to reel it in a bit because I feel like I've just been stalling a little bit.
Right. Yes. I mean, we all track in some way or the other, because if you look at yourself in the mirror, that's tracking. If you look at your belt, that's tracking. You know, how your clothes fit. You're aware of what's going on. Tracking is just looking at progress in different ways. And again, I think golden what you said about OMAD, because especially if someone's got disordered eating in their past, you can feel like you're gorging. I mean, I understand the physiology of OMAD and keeping your insulin low, but for some people it doesn't work because they know they're not getting the nutrients they need. And I like the expression used there, but you feel like you're gorging. I know Ken Berry uses the expression feasting. I get that as well, but some people don't feel like that. So I'm a bit like that. I'm a 2 MAD person, maybe 3 MAD sometimes. And it does depend on social situations. I just want to go back on one other thing, because you said about the anxiety. Is it very noticeable to you and also people around you, or is it just something you notice that your anxiety is more under control?
I did ask my husband to give me an honest review, and he saw a difference. He was very supportive of me trying to go off my meds again. So he's like, I wouldn't have let you done that if it wasn't, I mean, not that he technically has that control, but yes, he was very supportive because he could see a difference. That being said, I do notice, because I do still drink coffee. I mean, I have some right here that I'm looking at, and I notice this makes me more anxious if I have too much. I even notice myself like grinding my teeth when I've had too much. So yeah, I mean, I feel my best when I'm just on, meat, eggs, and bacon and butter, and I'm addicted to coffee too. And it's funny because I don't even necessarily need the caffeine. I feel like I feel good on carnivore without. And I've even heard, that the coffee can mess with your energy levels and, you're crashing and all that. But yeah, I definitely notice it playing around with my anxiety, and it would probably be worth toying with giving it up. I got rid of it for 2 weeks. And it just brings me so much joy. I even tried to replace it with like bone broth or hot water. But I mean, even black coffee, I drink black coffee most of the time, and it's good to me. I understand it's like bitter, and some people think it tastes like dirt, but I actually do love the taste and the ritual. And when you don't drink or do drugs anymore, this is the one buzz that I have. So it's hard to give up. But yeah, I noticed that it doesn't serve me as well as I wish it did.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that comes up on this channel ever such a lot, and partly I'm to blame because I really was a sort of coffee connoisseur, a snob about it. I like my beans to be ground in the morning, and I'm now gone to decaf. But yes, if you've got anxiety, yes, caffeine is a banned substance in many sports because it's such a stimulant. So yes, if you have anxiety and then you have some caffeine, yeah, you can boost up your anxiety, definitely. But then you've got the net benefit type of argument, because I always use this example, sorry to people that heard it before, but I have a few clients that say, if I didn't have my first coffee in the morning, I probably wouldn't be carnivore, because I like to go out, have the early morning sunlight. I like to sit and have my coffee. And if I didn't do that, I would do something worse and I wouldn't be enjoying carnivore. So, and you literally just sort of said the same sort of thing. You've got to find that sweet spot with it. Oh, shouldn't use the word sweet spot, but that perfect place where, you could try Swiss water decaf or not have it at all. I'm one of those that drifts in and out. Absolutely. Even as a coach and doing it and seeing with hundreds of people, I think maybe the empathy is good, because it's one of the hardest things, I think, because coffee, it does have that ritual. And I think that's the thing. I think Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David were talking about, if you go out to an ice cream parlor and the person doesn't have ice cream, that's the ritual is that's what it is. You can't go in and ask for a pizza even, and I think that's the same with coffee. If you go out to meet your friends, a glass of water doesn't seem to cut it as a cup of coffee. So one of the things I picked you because I wanted to talk to you because your internet presence is fantastic. So what are you doing to spread the word?
What am I doing to spread the word? Well, I mostly spread the word through my food, sharing recipes, sharing what I eat in a day. And, people are always like, oh my gosh, no vegetables or fruits. So that's how I get my message out mostly. I do try and share a little bit more of like the information on why, but the science behind things isn't really my wheelhouse. I can take in a lot of information and understand it, and then to go and like say it, like I can't like regurgitate it. So I focus more on what I know, and that's the food, sharing the recipes, showing what I'm eating. And I do some interviews here and there with some people, for those people that do know what they're talking about, so I can help get the message out that way instead of it coming from me. But yeah, it's been a wild ride sharing my journey. Like I said, I was sharing my low carb keto stuff before coming to this way. I never once got any bad comments at all. And I didn't follow other carnivore influencers besides Carnivore MD when I first started sharing this. So had I known, maybe I would have looked in the comments to see what sort of abuse they were getting, but I had no idea like what I was up against. I just thought it was like, oh, I'm just sharing this. And the overwhelming response I've been getting in a negative way has been pretty insane. Yeah, I didn't expect all this, and people are really nasty. What we're doing goes against everything that we've been told. So for someone to maybe think like, gosh, have I been lied to about nutrition? Like, what is this lady talking about? It could be a little triggering, and we've just been misinformed on cholesterol and heart disease and all that. So when they see me eating a stick of butter and a ribeye, they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to have a heart attack. It's like, but no, it doesn't actually work that way. So I do try and share a little bit, of why it doesn't work that way. But I don't know. I feel like that's just not my strong suit. So I just try and show up with the food side of things, and hopefully be the go-to for people that don't just want burger patties and steaks. Like, honestly, I'd be fine eating burger patties and steaks every day. But I know some people don't, and they need more variety. And I do love food, and I love cooking. So I create all these carnivore recipes for everyone else, really. I mean, it's fun for me to do, and we do enjoy them and eat them, but I wouldn't necessarily be doing all this if it wasn't like to also help other people. So it's been a fun outlet.
Yeah, I think the recipe side of things is possibly because your occupation at one point.
Yes.
Would you like to share what you did?
Yeah. So I was a former yacht chef. I use that term loosely. That was what I was called, but I'm not a culinary trained chef. I didn't go to school. I'm self-taught. So call me a cook, that's fine. But that's what I did. I was on yachts I joined in 2010 for about like 7 years. I started out as a stewardess. And so I was scrubbing toilets and making beds, and I was serving all the drinks and the food. And then I kind of moved over to, I've always loved cooking. And so then I took a position where I was still a stew, but I was cooking for the crew. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. My favorite part of the day was cooking lunch for the crew. It was not scrubbing the toilets. It was not making the beds. So then after that, when I left that boat, I was like, okay, I want to do cooking full time. That's what I'm going to do. So I freelanced, and I did a lot of different like charter trips. Whereas before, all my boats were more long-term, where I lived on the boats for years and worked on them. So when I switched to the cooking side, it was, I'd fly out and meet a boat for like a week or two and cook, or I would do like a 2 to 3 month trip on this one boat, but I was still a stewardess. So I would scrub their toilets and then go cook dinner for them. But yeah, it was just what I've always loved to do, cook and play in the kitchen. And now it's weird. It looks a lot different being in the kitchen. I don't use spices anymore. I'm not using garlic and onions, mirepoix for, like everything I used to do is just so simple now. And it's kind of freeing. I did love cooking how I did before with a million ingredients, but it's just nice to just, keep it simple. Like, what animal are we having tonight? Throw it on the grill, boom, it's done. So yeah, it's weird because it's so different, but I love it. Like it's just easy and simple and fast. Everything's quick and easy.
Yeah, it is. And also it's easy to clean up. I think things like air fryers are amazing. We just got the Ninja grill and air fryer, and it's beautiful. It's so simple. And I think that's the thing about carnivore. It's very simple and it's good for you. Weight loss becomes, or weight management maybe is better to word, or even fat loss. That seems to be better. So it's interesting. Just dialing back, you said your husband sent you some videos. This is how it all started, but that was more to get you off of medications. Is that right? Is that more
No, we weren't even thinking about that side. It was more like he was suggesting, because I was like telling him like, I don't feel good, this sucks, blah blah blah. He's like, okay, do you just want me to listen, or do you want suggestions? And so I'm like, no, tell me. And he was suggesting like I go back onto keto. And I guess I just wasn't quite ready. So that's why he was sending me those, because I was, ready to get back into losing weight and feeling better. So he sent me those, and he immediately went strict carnivore. I had no intention of going strict carnivore. I got sucked into what Saladino's preaching. My carb and sugar addicted brain was like, oh, yes, I get to have sugar still, the fruit, So I was animal based for about 5 weeks. I was mindful of my carb amount just coming from the low carb keto place. So I wasn't in ketosis, but it would definitely be considered low carb still. I was probably 50 grams of carbs, maybe 75. So I would prioritize my meats and my burgers, have about a cup of blueberries, pour some maple syrup on my burgers with butter, which I will say was really fabulous. And I do miss that. But I realized, it worked for a little bit. And then I'm like, gosh, like I would eat a ribeye, be full, be satiated, and I would want blueberries. So it's like my mouth was still hungry for sweet. My brain wanted sweet when I didn't need them. So maybe that works for some people. I don't think there's anything wrong with maybe once in a while, even once a week, having like a handful of blueberries. If you think back to what we're told our ancestors did, and they did come across a bush of berries here and there. But for me, it's the whole moderation thing. And I can't just have a handful of blueberries once a week. It just kicks in the sweet craving. So I don't do stevia. I don't do anything with sugar, any sort of sweetness, because it will all spiral. So for me, meat, meat is what does it.
What sort of meat? Is it ribeyes or is it lamb? What are you eating?
Yeah, primarily beef. So lots of ground beef burgers will do. Love ribeyes. I wish they were cheaper. I would have them more often, but Costco has great ribeyes. I have a favorite ground beef that I found at Whole Foods that's super affordable. So I do focus on those two. Once in a while, like tri-tip will go on sale for like $4 or $5 a pound. Love tri-tip in the air fryer or the smoker. Once in a while, I'll have lamb. It's just a little gamey. I do love it. I do have like lamb lollipops, but I mean, to me, nothing compares to beef. So prioritize beef. We do have a lot of bacon. I always have some sort of like soft yolk eggs that are cooked in the Instant Pot in the fridge. And we have all those handy and ready to go.
That's great. And do you supplement at all with iodine or electrolytes or anything?
I do have a magnesium. I've heard like no matter what we eat, that like 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium. And I heard that it does help anxiety. So I take magnesium glycinate and I use a ton of salt on things. I just started with having the Element electrolyte drinks because I'm just a drink person. So maybe trying to like wean off of the coffee. Like even though I use the raw unflavored, it still has a flavor to me and I really enjoy it. So I've been having those lately. And I would say like once in a blue moon, I will take an organ supplement. And honestly, maybe like once every few weeks. I feel like it's almost, intuitively how you would eat some, like, oh, liver sounds good today. So I just take it in that form, which I understand is not even necessary, that we don't need them to thrive. But just once in a while, I'm like, oh, let's see what this is going to do. And I think that's it. I'm new into hearing about iodine after hearing Dr. Elizabeth Bright talk about it. So I don't know much about that. Yeah, I'll have to dig on that, but that's all I take for now.
Yes, and one of the things you said right at the beginning, and I thought it was golden, so I've saved it to the end. And I'm going to ask you, after I've just reminded you what you said, what we eat. You were surprised that what we eat affects how we are, which is a beautiful way of putting it. That we just don't get that food is going to make that amount of difference until you eat this way. And then you go, wow, that's actually really obvious that what we're putting into our body is going to make such a big difference. So if someone was thinking about going carnivore, listening to this, or watching it on YouTube, and they said, right, could you, Courtney, give me a tip or any sort of sage advice about me starting carnivore? What do you think you would say to them?
Definitely give it a shot if you're curious. Minimum 30 days. I would say even 3 months to really like reap all those benefits. But I feel like you'll notice a change in a few weeks for sure. Like give it 3 months if you can. You can always go back to how you ate before. If you're worried about like the cholesterol in the arteries and all that, which is not a concern, at least for me. Nothing, well, I guess I can't say this, but I would think nothing bad would happen in those few months. And yeah, I hear a lot of people say like, gosh, I didn't realize how bad I feel till I did this. I think we get used to these aches and pains. You get up in the morning, maybe your joints are sore. We just get used to feeling not 100%. We just think it's normal. And, I get a lot of messages sent to me every day, which I love, of people's success stories. And you name it, I've heard it. Like, I don't want to say that this is a miracle diet or way of eating, but it seems to be, because I've heard people's stories of literally, you name it, it has helped it. I always butcher this name. We'll call it RA, rheumatoid arthritis, however you say it. Someone that's trying to heal their MS with it. I've heard of just any autoimmune issues, skin issues. I've talked to a few people that are autistic, and they say that it is helping I always say this, like, I feel like symptoms is the wrong word, but whatever it is, either like OCD or their anxiety or whatever little tics that they have, they say that it's improving that. I feel like you name it, it's helping people. So I feel like it's worth a shot. Migraines is another one I hear people say. PMS, I feel like, is a big one that a lot of people don't talk about. Like, it's not normal to be, bloated and having painful periods like that. It shouldn't be that way. Hashimoto's, PCOS, like, it's just been life-changing for so many people. I would just encourage anybody to give it a shot. And you can always go back to eating the crap that you ate before if you don't enjoy it.
So you might have spotted that Courtney said you could be worried about LDL or saturated fat clogging up your arteries. If you're really interested in finding out more, look at my Ask the Experts playlist and you can get the answers to all of your questions.